What do markets actually misunderstand about either French politics or the French economy going forward?
I think that they misunderstand our total determination to have more growth, our total determination to have a sustainable growth, and also our total determination to come back to sound public finances. And on the last point, I don't want to have any kind of misunderstanding. We want to have sound public finances in France to reduce the level of public debt, not only by growth, even if growth is the new starting point for coming back to sound public finances, but also thanks to structural reforms. We decided a reform on the labour market. We will decide and introduce a reform on the pension system, and also by reducing the level of public expenses in France. That's the program on which we have been elected in 2017, and we will stick to that determination.
So, Minister, first of all, when you look at some of the pension reforms, what are we actually expecting from that? I mean, this is one of the hardest things to do in France. Will it get done if President Macron stays on?
It will get done, and I'm totally convinced that it will get done early in the mandate, because it must be a starting point for a new improvement of the economic situation in France. We need to have more people on the labour market. We need to have more growth to face the climate change and to have a sustainable growth. And I think that a large majority of French people are fully aware of the necessity of a pension reform.
If you look at the pension reform and the difficulties with that, I know Mr. Macron also promised to get rid of 120,000 public employees. That was extremely hard. Why was that so hard?
I think it's always hard when you are explaining that you must get rid of employees, either public or private. And I think that we need to change our approach. The idea is not to getting rid of public people. The idea is to be more efficient and less costly. That's our political role.
If you want more stability on the budget, does it mean that tax cuts are off the table?
No, we need more tax cuts. We need more tax cuts for the private companies, and especially for the industry. If you want to have a strong industry, you cannot have a level of production taxes that is more important, heavier than the one that you have in Germany or in Italy. You know that we decided with President Macron a reduction of the production taxes of 10 billion euros, and there is a need for more reduction in the production taxes, because this is a too heavy burden for the French industry. You know, the key point is not the tool. The key point is the economic goal. Our economic goal is to increase the level of the French industry in the global French GDP.
But then, Minister, where did you get the money?
The money is given by growth. When you have more growth, you have more money and the possibility of reducing the level of public expenses, of public debt. We should always recall the failure of the 2008 crisis, when we decided as a solution to come back too early at too speedy pace to sound public finances, which means austerity. Austerity was a total failure. It led to less growth, less employment, and more debt. Austerity is clearly a dead end for the European economy. So we must invent something new. And the point on which we are working, the new policy on which we are working with all the 27 member states, it's not only a French solution, it must be a European solution, is to find a new balance between investment and sound public finances.
Minister, I'm getting quite a lot of questions actually from economists that are watching this program, so thank you for everyone watching on TV and on radio. Also, hello to our radio listeners. Minister, what happens when there's the first interest rate hike from the European Central Bank? Is France ready, and is this going to be the main challenge for the next president?
Of course that we stand ready. We are fully aware that we are coming back to a normal political situation and a normal economic situation, which means that there will be changes in the monetary policy, and we are fully aware of that. But if there is a change in the monetary policy, we also need to have a change in the economic policy. That's the key point, and that will be at the core of the discussion among the 27 member states during the informal ECOFIN in Paris at the end of the week. We must not come back to business as usual. We just are out of the most important economic crisis over the last century. Coming back to business as usual would be a total mistake. We need investment. Investment for the fight against climate change. Investment to get access to disruptive technologies like the semiconductors, the electric car batteries, the cloud, the biotechnologies, which means that we need to find this new economic policy based on investment and sound public finances.
Minister, how many finance ministers are actually behind this? So we caught up with the Austrian finance minister a couple of weeks ago in London, who says there's more frugal, actually, countries in Europe than the four we heard a couple of years ago. So how much of a fight will you have on your hands?
I don't see so much frugal countries in Europe now. I'm just seeing countries that are investing in renewable energies and new technologies. I see the Netherlands investing 75 billion euros in a new investment plan. I see Germany investing 60 billion euros in renewable energies to face the new energy policy in Germany. I see France investing 30 billion euros in this new investment plan. So I see a large majority, not to say all the 27 member states, being aware of the necessity not to come back to business as usual, but to invest in the fight against climate change and in the key technologies that will allow Europe to play the same role than China or the United States. What do we want? Do we want to have our own supply chains like China or like the United States? Or do we want to be dependent on the semiconductors coming from Taiwan and the electric car batteries coming from China? We want to be independent.
How long will it take for that to happen?
It takes some years. It's a new strategy for Europe, but it will be a winning strategy. And that's the only one which will allow Europe to play its part between China and the United States. Let's have a look at the new globalization. The new globalization is based for the 21st century on independence. China wants to be independent. The United States want to be independent. Europe must be independent as far as the key technologies are concerned. I don't want Europe to be, for its automotive industry, for its aeronautic industry, too much dependent on the supply chain from South Korea, China, or Taiwan.
Minister, I was going to ask you actually about Renault. Will France continue supporting Renault if they continue doing EVs in China?
I think that we made very clear that the French state stands behind all its key industries, Airbus, Renault, EDF, because they are at the core, or Air France, they are at the core of the French economy. So if there is a need to support any kind of companies in which the French state has share, like Renault, EDF, Air France, or some other companies, we stand ready to support them.
Even if they don't necessarily play ball in trying to get some of the supply chain back to Europe?
They have to put some new supply chain in Europe and in France. And I made very clear to Renault, with the very good leadership of Luca De Meo and Jean-Dominique Senard, that they have to invest more in Europe, to create more jobs in Europe, and to have the new electric supply chains being in France and in Europe.
Minister, on Air France KLM, when are you expecting this operation to be done by? How quickly does it need to be done by so that they can function like a normal company and maybe take part in M&A?
It's up to Ben Smith to decide, and France is the French state is one of the players that can provide support to Air France, but not the only one.
Minister, you're young. You're, lauded as one of the best finance ministers that certainly this country has had. Will you run for president next time round?
For the time being, I'm supporting with all my heart and all my belief President Macron. Because, you know, I think that France needs stability. And the foreign investors need visibility as far as the economic policy of France is concerned. And they can take for granted that if Emmanuel Macron is re-elected, we will stick to that policy which will improve the competitiveness of the French companies and improve the attractiveness of France.
So you're not saying no? We'll see.
We'll see.
Is it fair to
you know the sentence by Shakespeare. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me.